China's artificial intelligence industry is advancing steadily, with technological innovation and real-world applications progressing hand in hand, and computing power continues to grow. At the 2026 Spring Festival Gala, the performance WuBot blended traditional kung fu with intelligent robotics. Through seamless human-machine collaboration, it showcased a dynamic balance of strength and elegance, highlighting China's latest breakthroughs in precision control, coordinated systems, and cultural innovation. As the 15th five-year plan begins, artificial intelligence is rapidly empowering a wide range of industries, emerging as a key engine for high-quality economic and social development. James Heckman, professor at the University of Chicago and recipient of the 2000 Nobel Prize in Economics, notes that China holds multiple advantages in AI development and that these technologies will play a vital role in driving future economic growth.
Professor Heckman, thank you so much for joining us on Leaders Talk. How has AI empowered and transformed us?
This process is one of a lot of transition. A lot of new things are being done. A lot of new skills are being done. A lot of new opportunities are opening up. That people talk about exposure of jobs to various kinds of AI. But exposure doesn't necessarily mean job loss. Exposure could mean job enhancement. So if I'm working in a factory and AI can help me manufacture whatever product I am or do my job better, then that actually enhances it can enhance my employment. Generative AI essentially produces new ideas or helps you crystallize new ideas.
Right. More high-skilled work. Yeah.
Well, what had been high-skilled, I mean, think of what a lawyer does. A good lawyer is not only going to court and interviewing people and doing presentations on behalf of clients, but there's an awful lot of legal research going on. So you have individuals, law clerks, and the lawyers themselves will be scanning the literature. A good AI can help you scan the literature tremendously, bring to bear all the case law that's relevant. But more likely in the generative AI, it's making you more productive and more effective. And so a lot of the drudge work that goes with being a lawyer and being an accountant and being a bank clerk and so forth, a lot of that can be replaced. But a lot of these professional jobs are more than just drudge work. They involve thinking, execution, creativity and thinking about new ideas, and then freeing yourself to go out and find new customers and new clients.
Professor Heckman, and also you were awarded the Friendship Award, which is the highest honor granted by Chinese government to foreign experts like you. And that was given 2019.
2019,
yeah, in recognition of your outstanding contribution to China's economic and social progress. So what does this award mean to you, Professor?
Well, so it meant a lot to me. It's good. I mean, I didn't realize I would get the award. I was pleased. First of all, I went to the ceremony, and that was the 70th anniversary ceremony. So I saw the parade in Tiananmen Square, went through the Forbidden City. I'd been to Forbidden City on several occasions, but never so extensively. So we were taking tours, taking us back. So I was very pleased.
Oh, really? It was a little bit unexpected to you at that moment?
Yes, I certainly didn't know that I was going to get it. I'm not even sure I deserve it. I mean, I'm sure there are people who've given more to China than me. But I am worried. I am working a lot in China. I find it a very interesting place. But it's the dynamism. I'll tell you what I find interesting about China. My father was grew up in an area that's an area called Oklahoma. Do you know Oklahoma?
Yeah, I've been there.
Western Oklahoma and Texas, in the area of the Permian Basin. You've been to Borger, Texas, or Amarillo? No. So that was oil boom country in the 1920s and 30s when my father was young. And he told me a lot about the boom towns that were there. So I felt that kind of dynamism also at work in China. It was opening up the markets. There was a lot of entrepreneurship. People were going in and trying new ideas. There was an expansion of the country's production, I should say, and exchange with the world. Quality
Fast growing, very vibrant.
Fast growing, very vibrant. You could feel the optimism in everybody's body, in their faces, and in the projects they were describing. So I like that very much. There was a sense that there was vitality, which I saw, a real sense of vitality and engagement with Chinese scholars and engagement with Chinese coming into the world in a very, very general way.
As a renowned economist in human development, you spoke highly about China's efforts in expanding women's access to education and their broader participation in labor force, calling it one of the major contributors to China's economic success. So why this factor especially stood out to you?
Well, for one thing, unlike many countries, and remember this started around the time of the 1949, and so what happened is that many countries in the West, the labor force participation of women was much lower. The roles for women were much more prescribed. There were in many cases women couldn't become professionals. In the United States, it was even the case that it was very difficult for women to get jobs in occupations like lawyering or forms of scientific research and many other professions outside of teaching, librarianship, nursing, medical care. And so what happened was that China brought in these people into the economy, productive people, and invested in them, and it also gave them education. So it made it much better for the status of the economy and for the women. So it gave women empowerment, which weren't there. So you can see, like right now, more girls are going to college than boys, and the opportunities opened up, and those are opportunities for the economy. So you have a large number of very brilliant Chinese workers, some women, some men, a lot of smart women, and I think that's a real advantage.
You first came to China in 1997, has since then come to the country for many times. Correct. So which part of the country's development impressed you for all those years?
Well, China's developed so rapidly, it's hard. I mean, if you look at China as a whole, not just what I've worked on, but if you can look at the development, both in terms of occupations, you look in terms of industry, the fact that it's moved up the quality chain in terms of producing goods, and also had much better logistics and the whole analysis. If you look at the infrastructure, for example, in China, I remember coming here in 1997 to the old airport in Beijing. And now you look at the airport, or airports now in Beijing.
We have two in the capital.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is you can see that the infrastructure, the roads, the trains, the airplanes, the whole country has become much more vital and active in the sense of having communications channels and logistics. So the promoting a very positive, there was a book written in maybe 10 years ago by a New York Times reporter who was quoting Obama when he visited China. And he was Obama was admiring the infrastructure that was here in China being built, bridges, roads, and so forth. So he was talking about the fact, America had gotten involved in all these wars. We're spending our money in Iraq and Afghanistan, and China wasn't. And that was enable them to be able to bring their people up and to bring the roads and the whole industry up. And then you add to that the fact that China has reached much greater level of competence in many different areas of world trade and world scholarship. So in many, many different ways, the level of China has been risen almost in every sector of the economy. So that part of it, I think, is very impressive.
Professor, you expressed your concerns for the reciprocal tariff imposed by the Trump administration to other countries. Dozens of influential economists, including you, signed an anti-tariff declaration, which voiced very strong opposition to tariff as well as protectionism.
Yes.
So can you share with some of the major concerns that motivated economists like you to do this, which is not the first time. 2019, the same kind of similar letter to the Trump administration. So why?
Well, I think the reason is that the policies that's being adopted are without any foundation.
But from economic front,
from an economic standpoint, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
The calculation of the tariffs was not founded on any basic economic principle. If you look at if you look at the rates that have been figured nation by nation, there's no basis for that. There's no logic in that.
What economic catastrophe could impact it?
What's happened is the cost of living has gone up. The idea is you put a tariff and we're going to produce this in the United States, and that's going to bring more jobs back. And first of all, it's going to make it more inefficient because we're not efficient at growing avocados or coffee or many of these things that we can't grow. Right. And secondly, that it's really creating harm for a lot of poorer people, workers, and others who are buying these goods. The coffee is pretty widely consumed, and it's not grown in the country. So you say, well, what? Coffee gone up 15, 20%, 25%? I've heard different figures.
What are the biggest global disruptions that you concern as an economist?
I think
tariffs to the global economy, to the global trade?
No, but it's creating a sense of instability in the trade. Right now, when tariffs come and go, when people can negotiate a tariff, we know from basic economic principles that when you start creating uncertainty of this sort, people hold back. They don't invest. They're being very careful about creating long-term relationships. So we're destroying those relationships, and we're making the United States a much riskier trading partner. So what had been a pattern of comparative advantage and gain. So look at all the new trading patterns that are being reassembled as a result to get around dealing with the United States. So now if the United States is capricious the way it is, that many countries don't want to deal with anymore. They find alternative supply routes and so forth and so on.
As a renowned economist, what way do you work?
But I mean the following way, that you think of working in a coal mine, you shovel coal and put it in a car and bring it to the earth. And so. No, what I'm doing is doing something I'm passionately interested in.
Smartly.
Just deeply curious. So I have a curiosity factor that's very deep. And so when I'm answering questions, I find the greatest satisfaction. The great pleasure comes from answering something new.
Professor, as a Nobel Laureate yourself, so if there's just one advice that you would like to give to the young economists who also aspire maybe to become a Nobel Laureate in the future, just one advice, what would it be?
Well, I would just say follow your curiosity to the point of exhaustion. You just stay with the problem until you really understand it. That's what I would say.
Follow your curiosity and pursue real questions. This is the advice Heckman offers to young scholars and a reflection of his own academic journey. For nearly 6 decades, he has worked across disciplinary boundaries, driven by a constant passion for discovery, finding both purpose and joy in the pursuit of knowledge.
Well, Professor, you had background in mathematics and physics, and you have described your switch to economics as kind of accidental. So now, about 6 decades in the research of economics, which part of the journey that you enjoy the most?
Well, the thing that I've always enjoyed, and it's a private enjoyment too, is there are certain problems that I've started to address. And as I've gone into them, I've learned more and more about them. And as I've learned more about them, there's a sense of pleasure that comes from that discovery. A thing that's very interesting here is the sense really of going into some new area and then coming out uncertain about the answer and then seeing what the answer is, whichever way it comes out. And sometimes it's very surprising, sometimes it's very disappointing, sometimes you haven't really done what you hoped you would have done, but that's also interesting, and then you can learn. So I think it's I very much enjoy learning, and so learning even from my own mistakes. And so, if I can challenge, it's not a question of my going out on the balcony and saying, here, I did it. It's more like a private joy that comes from understanding something that I didn't understand before.
Economists always tend to prioritize hard concepts like quantifiable metrics, interest rate, right, or monetary aggregates. But you have emphasized the importance of soft elements like mother's love or mental care or mental support to someone.
I had an interview a long time ago from public radio on some paper I wrote about the return on early investment in children. And I remember I said I really thought the love of the mother was really very important. It really was true that this parental engagement is so critical.
When you write the book, you said that you were always very positive, very confident about the development of China. So where does this constant optimism come from?
Well, I think it comes from several forces. Dealing with the Chinese and seeing the vitality in the society. And I think there's a fundamental energy there. The elements are there. The vitality is there in terms of the industries, the universities. The country's vital. The people are intelligent. The society is rich in a fundamental way. And it has the Chinese have always been very pragmatic and very realistic.
Very hardworking.
Hardworking, too. That's why I like Chinese students. I love Chinese students.
Yes.
No, a lot of the American students are lazy as hell. They won't work. There's a sense of pride of self and a sense of pride in their work, and I value that. I have other students. That's not this. So I think China still has a work ethic, but I've got a sense that the next generation of Americans, my children, have that work ethic, but there are a lot of people out there who don't seem to. You know, a lot of these drug addicts and people living in these areas, enclaves in the country, and they're just dependent people. They're not, and they have no pride. They're not working. They're using drugs heavily. They're living off welfare. They're doing all of these, and they just seem to be people who are just parasites on the society. They're not aiming. Look at China as a place that has a deep sense of values, hard work, and the values that I think are truly virtues, character values. So there's a sense. But see, China also has a chip on its shoulder. It does. No, it's had a chip on its shoulder since 1840, the Opium Wars, right? And so there's a sense that you can see it, and I don't mind. That's kind of good, because they're getting stronger and stronger, and you can't help but admire it in the sense that, yes, they are stronger, and they are doing things much more wisely in many ways than what we're doing. So there's a sense in which there's more of a sense of purpose in China, don't you think? That the people are more... Most of the Chinese students that I deal with and people I deal with, even though they may disagree on details, have this sense of unity and pride in China.
Right.
And I think that's lacking with a lot of Americans.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you. It's a
okay.
great...
Well, good luck.